Hello, my name is Trevor McKeeman. I'm the founder and CEO of Hitchpin. I'd like to welcome you guys to the Alpha Ag Network Summit, February 25th and 26th. I always look at these summits and think, what are the most important reasons to attend and to watch these things? Well, first of all, there's so much happening in agriculture right now. We have changes in technology, we have changes in policy, in trade. All these things are going to be covered in the Alpha Ag Network Summit, including panels with farmers and discussions about weather. From a Hitchpin perspective, we are excited about this, particularly on the front of technology. We think technology is going to change the game as we are able to link farmers as buyers and sellers to be able to hire services and sell things like equipment and cattle and hay. So anyway, join us February 25th and 26th for the Alpha Ag Network Summit. And thank you for joining.
And welcome to the Alpha Ag Summit. We want to thank you all for attending on whichever platform you are streaming this program on. I'm Kyle Hill, Farm Director of Superstation Crest FM 104.7 in the Magic City of Moberly, Missouri. I'm also part of the team with the Kansas Agriculture Network and 580 WIBW in Topeka, Kansas. With the end of the 116th Congress came the end of 3 congressional careers, which had a significant impact on agriculture policy. The retirements of 2 Republicans, Senator and former Senate Ag Committee Chairman Pat Roberts of Kansas and former House Ag Chairman Mike Conaway of Texas. We also saw the defeat of then House Ag Committee Chairman Collin Peterson of Minnesota. The look of both Ag committees has changed, and with it, new voices and potentially new direction as the top issues of 2021 await them. And even further ahead is what the next farm bill might need to look like. Our panel discussion is brought to you by Hitchpin, agriculture's preferred marketplace, connecting farmers with products, services, and consumers. Hitchpin is also the presenting sponsor of our Alpha Ag Summit. Today's panel will be split into 2 sections. Our first will feature 2 of the newest members of the House Agriculture Committee. Later in the program, we'll hear from members of the Senate Ag Committee. Let's now introduce the House members taking part in this morning's panel. Randy Feenstra represents Iowa's 4th Congressional District, which includes 39 counties across northwestern and north central Iowa. Feenstra was born and raised in Hull, where he served as city administrator, Sioux County treasurer, and Iowa State senator for 12 years. In addition to the Ag Committee, Feenstra is serving on the Budget and Science, Space, and Technology committees. We are glad to have you on today, Mr. Feenstra.
Great to be on today. Thanks for having me.
And we also bring on this morning Tracy Mann, who represents Kansas's Big 1 Congressional District. That's 63 of the state's 105 counties. Mann is a 5th-generation Kansan who was born and raised on his family farm just south of Quinter. Prior to representing the 1st District, Mann served Kansas as its 50th lieutenant governor. Mann will also serve on the Veterans Affairs Committee in addition to the Ag Committee. Representative Mann, we're glad to have you on today.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for what you're doing, getting the word out about agriculture. It's a pleasure to be on this panel with Congressman Feenstra, a good friend, tremendous advocate for the industry, and really excited about this time.
Joining me on this side of the table will be Scott Collin of the Farm Director of KLGR 1490 AM and 95.9 FM in Redwood Falls, Minnesota. He may be jumping in from time to time with any additional questions from our audience. We thank producers who have logged on to alphaagsummit.com to participate and contribute potential discussion items. Before we begin, we remind everyone that the views and opinions expressed on this summit are not those of Alpha Media and do not represent the viewpoints of Alpha Ag Network stations, their farm directors, or management. This broadcast is protected by copyright law, and credit should be given whenever sharing or reposting this video. We will start off with activity going on in the House today. The 2 of you just came back from one of the votes going on concerning the budget reconciliation effort by the White House and Democrats to get $1.9 trillion of additional aid to Americans, some of that involving agriculture. For starters, Representative Mann, what's the mood among the caucus, among all the House members as this is being debated, and what what issues are in there for agriculture?
Well, I would say the mood is very partisan. And, today, $1.9 trillion we vote on. This is the biggest spending bill in the history of the country. I'm strongly opposed to it. I have a lot of concerns about it. Understand of this $1.9 trillion, only 9% actually goes to COVID health relief. The other, trillions of dollars goes to things that I don't support. Also, of this $1.9 trillion, approximately $16.2 billion is for agriculture. But the overwhelming majority of this bill goes to things that just aren't in the interest of the right direction of the country.
Representative Feenstra, your thoughts? Yeah, I agree with Congressman Tracy Mann and what exactly he is saying. It's very disappointing to see what $1.9 trillion, nearly $2 trillion, only 9% of it going to the efforts for COVID relief. But for the ag area, not only were we hit by COVID, but there was drought, there was a lot of wildfires. For us in Iowa, we had a derecho that wiped out 43% of our corn and soybean crop. And there's nothing there at all in the bill to help the WHIP program from USDA. These are things that as farmers we need. We need some help and assistance when it comes to the destruction of what happened in 2020. So truly disappointed. I'm at absolute no, just like Congressman Mann. We can do better than this. I expect better than this. And we do have to focus on agriculture as we move forward.
And one thing we noticed when this was being debated, at least the ag portion in your committee, was that the vote line ended up being partisan in one of the most bipartisan committees historically. Let's recap those discussions and the items that came up that you think should have had bipartisan support.
Sure. This is typically the Ag Committee is considered the most bipartisan committee in Congress. Of course, we're new. Was told that our first committee markup, which was week before last, was the most partisan Ag Committee markup that the long-term members had ever seen. Really disappointing way to kick off this Congress and to kick off the House Ag Committee. The support for agriculture and feeding our people and what our producers do to help, feed not just America, but the world, that should be bipartisan. That's in the national interest. Really disappointed. I did support all the amendments that Randy offered, that Congressman Feenstra offered up, were great amendments. Strongly supported them. Unfortunately, most of them failed on bipartisan lines, or on partisan lines.
And Representative Feenstra, let's recap some of those amendments that you had put forward. It sounded like that, there were some Democrats that might have been on board with them, but ended up not voting for them.
Exactly. There are some really key amendments. A couple of amendments were to help out the WHIP program, to make sure that dollars were going to places like Iowa, the derecho, or where the drought was, or wildfires, through the WHIP program. Another significant bill was to say, hey, let's use our small to medium size packers when we're giving out meat and other agricultural goods. I thought that was just a great bill to have. And then there's another bill that there's a bill to give disadvantaged farmers 120% loans or grants that are forgivable. And this has never happened in the history of the United States, that you're given grants at 120%. And the reason we asked, why the reason for the extra 20%, and that was to pay interest on those grants and / loans. And I know it's just sort of shocking to me how this all played out. It was completely partisan, and that in agriculture, that should never happen.
Representative Feenstra, we'll stick with you when discussing this item. Sounds like you will be, if you haven't already, visiting with the Rules Committee concerning efforts to provide relief for farmers and residents of Iowa that were impacted by last August's derecho. Give us an update on those efforts and what aid is still needed.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was one bill that did get through out of the hundreds of amendments that went through all the committees. We were one of the only ones to get one through in the Ag Committee. And that was in a way to help the WHIP program. I had one of the Democrat colleagues did support it, that got it over the top. So now it's going to rules, but rules is deciding to strip it out here, where the farming community desperately needs help, especially those that were hit. Like I said, in Iowa, 43% of our crop was destroyed by the largest thunderstorm ever in U.S. history. And this is one area, COVID is so important to help, but for our producers, this is one area that the government could help with, and yet Democrats are stripping it out. And I'm going to be on that committee today and talk with them and explain how important, how crucial it is to the farming community around the nation.
Have there been any discussions with any Democrats outside of the Ag Committee concerning why this aid is necessary?
So I've talked with everyone from California to Texas to Oregon to Washington, all those that have struggled with, whether it be wildfires in California, to the drought, to what has happened in Texas with the freezing conditions. Everybody says, yeah, I feel for producers. I said, here's the opportunity. This is the one opportunity that we can, just like COVID, we can do something here. And I'm hearing a lot of bipartisan support, but leadership, Pelosi doesn't want to go down that path and accept this amendment.
Representative Mann, of course, we're so lucky to go through a year in farming without any form of weather disaster. And for the past year or so, Western Kansas and by extension, most of Colorado, New Mexico, and points west have been dealing with extreme and exceptional drought. Well, for starters, what are you hearing from your constituents as to the impact of drought conditions that have been lasting for almost a year now?
Yeah. So, my district is 63 of Kansas's 105 counties. So it's almost 2/3 of the state. It's spotty. Certainly there are areas in Kansas that we're way behind on moisture really over the last couple of years. Very concerning. There's other areas that have had pretty good crops. So it's pretty spotty. Southwest Kansas, especially, a lot of drought. Back on Congressman Feaster's point, it's disappointing today's $1.9 trillion includes in it $150 million for a tunnel in Silicon Valley that Speaker Pelosi is supporting, yet it will likely not include money to help farmers in Iowa who were devastated by this storm that they had. Just that's an example of what we're dealing with here in Washington and how frustrating it is.
Now, turning our attention to the Ag Committee in general. Now that markup sounded like you guys' first impression of being on that committee. But, before that impression, Representative Mann, we'll start with you. Why was it important for you to receive this committee assignment during your first term in office?
Absolutely essential. So I grew up on a farm, feed yard. Our family was dramatically impacted in a good way by freedom to farm past, in the 1990s. I'm passionate about good ag policy, what it means for our producers, what it means for Kansas, what it means for the country. And so to secure a spot on the House Ag Committee was a huge honor. There were about 20 freshmen that vied for 6 spots. So Congressman Finster and I, really glad to get to serve with him and others on the committee. In yesterday's hearing, I'm sitting there, and as I look ahead, in front of me is a picture on the wall of Senator, Pat Roberts, who held this seat, at that time chaired the House Ag Committee. So there's a legacy in the district of people that have gone to Washington, strongly advocate for agriculture, and to try to fill some of those big shoes is the honor of a lifetime, and looking forward to rolling up my sleeves and getting to work.
Representative Feenstra, same question for you. Why was it important for you to have a spot on the Ag Committee in your first term?
I echo Congressman Mann's comments that what a privilege. We are the breadbasket to the world, from Kansas to Indiana to Iowa, to be part of that. And my family, also my in-laws, I've been on the farm all my life, from vaccinating cattle to loading hogs to, taking in the grain. That's just part of our life. And for myself, the 4th district in Iowa, 39 counties, we're one of the largest, our largest producers of of cattle and hogs and corn and soybeans in the country, and also eggs and turkeys. So for me, it's paramount to have a voice, to have an active voice, and then to be part of some of the great things that are happening right now: precision farming, biofuels, to the trade that is continuing to be expanded. And we're seeing that with the commodity prices currently. It's exciting to see. And I think I look forward to working with Congressman Mann and others to continue to be a voice, and an active voice, that we can do positive things in the Ag Committee.
Now, aside from the budget markup that happened recently in the Ag Committee, Representative Feenstra, we'll start with you on this question. What additional impressions can you give us about having the opportunity to work with your fellow committee members, and what other issues have you had the opportunity to discuss with them?
Yeah. So throughout the whole process of this first markup of the $1.9 trillion, a lot of discussion was held on what needs to be done in a real ag bill. And there's a lot of discussion on broadband, not broadband to each mile. It should be broadband to each acre. As we know, precision farming is so critical, and we use it. That's how the new technology, how farmers are going to continue to have success. Also, biofuels is so vital to each of our to agriculture all over the country, and to continue to figure out ways. This is the cleanest form of energy. We have to make sure that we're advocating for it. It's just phenomenal what it does for our commodity prices. And then finally, for me, it's pricing. We have to make sure that we continue to look at the commodity prices and look at pricing that's happening with livestock and cattle. That's very important to me also.
Representative Mann, same question. Any discussions, experiences, opportunities you've had to network with other members of the Ag Committee?
Sure. Talking to all the other members, figuring out where their priorities are, how we can work together. Following up on what Congressman Feenstra said, it seemed like there's bipartisan support for rural broadband. That's an economic development issue. That's a rural life issue. That's a precision agriculture issue. So hopefully we can get something done there. Yesterday was our first hearing. It was on climate. I think there's certainly the sentiment from the Ag Committee is that we need to be conveying how agriculture is part of the climate solution. You look over the last 10 years, greenhouse gas emissions produced by agriculture have reduced from 24% down to about 10%. Dramatic improvement. Agriculture is part of the solution to climate. We need to make sure that we're at the table and are compensated, and that is acknowledged accordingly.
We are conducting our congressional panel with members of the House Ag Committee during the Alpha Ag Summit. Our panelists, Representative Tracy Mann of Kansas, Representative Randy Feenstra of Iowa. Our panel is presented by Hitchpin. And we're going to go back to that meeting that took place yesterday, that hearing. Representative Mann discussed policy. Yesterday, Randy Thompson of Pennsylvania said in prepared remarks that the question wasn't whether or not climate change is real or whether or not to reduce emissions. The question was how to best approach it. He then went on to refer to our current Farm Bill, the 2018, as the greenest version ever. First of all, Representative Mann, any further remarks you have on how we're approaching climate policy and how farmers are contributing to helping reduce those greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah, I think it's big that we tout the benefits of agriculture to the environment, all that we do. In many ways, what's lost in the discussion, or can be if we don't remind people, is that farmers are the original environmentalists in the country. I've never met a farmer that doesn't care for the soil, doesn't care about the climate. In agriculture, your main business partner is Mother Nature, like it or not. And so we care greatly. Our producers care greatly about the land that they steward, also about the livestock that they care for. And so we need to make sure that that is conveyed and is made known to members from urban districts, so that it's very clear that agriculture is part of the climate solution moving forward.
Representative Feenstra, same question. Your impressions from yesterday's hearing?
Yeah, I just think we got to continue to tell our story, that we have all these voluntary conservation programs that are just doing a tremendous job. And yet there are technologies out there that we can continue to use. I mean, you think about what we're doing in the farming community now, from cover crops to terraces to buffer strips, to no-tilling. We're doing all these. I heard somebody say, well, we're not no-tilling. I don't know a farmer that doesn't no-till anymore. I mean, it's just out there. It's happening. But for technology, So we have the cleanest form of energy in biofuels, and we've got to really voice that, how important that is. And now there's ideas on carbon sequestration of taking the CO2 that's coming from ethanol and biodiesel plants and bringing it down to North Dakota into their different geology areas that we can store it. These are all things that we can do, create value added items for agriculture. And again, precision farming, the preciseness of what we can do when it comes to fertilizer and all this other stuff. We are on the cutting edge of what's happening for our climate and our environment. And I just applaud the farming community of what we're doing, but it's got to be voluntary, and we'll be successful.
We'll focus now on the next farm bill, which is set to be written over the next couple of years. We're halfway through the current farm bill now, which, as I had quoted Ranking Member Thompson earlier, he referred to the current farm bill as the greenest version ever. Representative Feenstra, what, in your view, could make the 2023 version even greener?
Exactly. I think whatever incentives we can give to voluntary programs. We have seen this in past farm bills where you give a carrot, and instead of having regulations that are a stick that never works out, incentives are the way to go. And I think we can do that to continue to look at no-till, to continue to look at cover crops and other things that are going on. For carbon capture, we're done a lot with 45Q. We got to continue to move down that path. But also in that farm bill to look at PLC and the ARC programs, looking at the insurance programs. These are all vital things for our producers to make sure that they stay whole and make sure that they can plant and raise livestock every year.
Representative Mann, same question. What in the next farm bill could improve on the gains or make even better what we've seen from the previous farm bill with respect to climate?
Yeah, sure. And good ag policy is going to benefit our environment. There's no doubt about that. I think we've got to acknowledge in these discussions that the distance from farm to fork has never been wider. And as the country continues to become more urbanized, there are fewer and fewer members of Congress from, that have experience in production agriculture. And we've got to continue to tell that story. When I think about the next farm bill coming up in 2023, crop insurance and other risk management tools will be essential. We've got to manage the risks that are inherent in agriculture and that are unique to our industry while we have a level playing field with the rest of the world, because given a chance to compete, American farmers can produce unlike anywhere else in the entire world. They're delighted to do that. They can benefit from that. Trade plays into that conversation, and just delighted to get to advocate for the industry.
Expanding the focus to the farm bill in general, Representative Mann, what successes have you seen with the current bill overall, and what else in particular should be addressed with this next version?
Sure. Crop insurance, is a big deal. Like I mentioned earlier, that's a really important thing throughout agriculture. We just got to make sure that we continue to tell that story and advocate for that. Somewhat related to the farm bill is trade. We have seen increased prices, especially the last half of last year, because China is adhering or making efforts to adhere to the phase one of the trade deal. We got to realize that phase one of the China trade deal expires now in less than a year. That thing expires February 15th. Of next year. So we got to be thinking about what does our future trade relationship look like with China and other countries long-term. Trade and increased demand that comes from trade is really the future of agriculture. We ought to also look at how we increase demand for our products domestically as well.
Representative Feenstra, anything to add to that or anything to reemphasize?
No, I would just echo Congressman Mann's comments there. And then crop insurance is such a vital key, and we just got to continue to look at that, making sure that it's there as a backbone for our producers. And then the voluntary conservation programs. There's so many great programs out there. We can continue to look at them, create ways that we can do conservation and help our environment. And then finally, biofuels. I can't say enough how much we need to be on the forefront of what we can do. It's the cleanest form of energy. We need to keep it. We have to echo that. It can actually be negative carbon as we move forward, unlike electric vehicles that can't. So we've got to be preaching this and saying how important it is. We were in a committee yesterday that somebody said that biofuels might not be the way to go. And that was really concerning. Finally, we're the breadbasket to the world, and everybody's got to know it. You don't buy food just at the grocery store. It starts in the fields and starts with our agricultural producers.
And one force that could help shape the Farm Bill, or at least get administration support on it, is the new Secretary of USDA, potentially Tom Vilsack, who has made his way back to the Witten building. One of his first public appearances since returning to the post was about an hour ago on our Ag Summit. Representative Feenstra, we'll start with you on this question. Your thoughts on a fellow Iowan resuming the role of USDA Secretary?
Exactly right. So he was the past governor of Iowa. I had a conversation with him about a week ago, just talking about how important it is, as I said, we are the breadbasket to the world, and how we have to look at the Midwest and how we can help out the farming community. And he gave me his support, saying, "You're exactly right." So I look forward to working with him. Again, we have to stay focused on what's important to new trade areas, to biofuels, to making sure our producers can stay whole and stay in the industry. So look forward to working with him.
Representative Mann, your thoughts on Secretary Vilsack being secretary once again?
I also look forward to working with him. He served for 8 years in that role, so probably the most known quantity of any new Secretary of Agriculture we've ever seen. And it's important to point out, he received broad bipartisan support in his confirmation. I think it was 92-7. Both Kansas senators supported his nomination, and I look forward to meeting with and working with Secretary Vilsack to advance agriculture for the good of Kansas and the Midwest and the country.
We are coming up towards the end of our time with our two newest members of the House Ag Committee, Representative Randy Feenstra of Iowa, Representative Tracy Mann of Kansas. Gentlemen, we thank you very much for visiting with us. Anything additional that you'd like to pass along to our viewers and listeners here at the Alpha Ag Summit today? Representative Mann.
I would just say we've got to continue to advocate for the industry. We've got to tell the story of agriculture. We have the ability to do that like we've never before with social media, with things like this. We have got to continue to bang the drum and remind people throughout the country where their food comes from and how important food, fiber, our fuel, our clothing, all that comes from agriculture is imperative to our way of life here in America and around the world. And we've got to continue to loudly tell the story of all the great things in agriculture today. So thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
And Representative Feenstra, any final comments for our summit this morning?
Again, thanks so much for having me on. I think one other issue that we have to be very vigilant on and watching is the new EPA director, Michael Regan. Waters of the U.S. are so critical. We have to watch out where that goes. And for the last 4 years, everything has gone very well, but it's got to be on our radar. So again, thank you. We are the breadbasket to the world, and we've got to tell our story. So thanks for having me on. It's a pleasure to be on with Congressman Mann today also.
Representative Randy Feenstra of Iowa's 4th Congressional District in Northwest Iowa. Representative Tracy Mann of Western Kansas, the 1st Congressional District of the Sunflower State, visiting with us on our Alpha Ag Summit House portion of the Congressional Panel. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, and thanks for doing this.
Yep, thank you so much.
And this will conclude the House portion of our Congressional Panel presented by Hitchpin. Once again, our thanks to the Republican House Ag Committee members, Randy Feenstra of Iowa and Tracy Mann of Kansas. A quick reminder that the views and opinions expressed on today's panel are not those of Alpha Media and do not represent the viewpoints of Alpha Ag Network stations, their farm directors, or management. This broadcast is protected by copyright law, and credit should be given whenever sharing or reposting this video. In just a moment, we'll have the Senate portion of our panel. We do have a quick programming note. It looks like it will be just Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas joining us this morning. Senator Smith of Minnesota unable to join. A last-minute scheduling conflict occurred. So while we get situated with Dr. Marshall, we will present prepared remarks from longtime Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to take part in the Alpha Media Ag Summit. Producers of all sizes rely on farm radio for news, weather, and daily crop reports. The big show on WHO radio is a big thing in Iowa. The role that farm radio plays in making sure farmers have the most updated and accurate information is very essential for their businesses. And I want to thank farm broadcasters for the service they provide. Unfortunately, this year, the news hasn't always been enjoyable to report on, especially around commodity prices and all the natural disasters that we had in agriculture, particularly the derecho windstorm across Iowa. During the initial coronavirus supply chain disruption, I saw corn drop to below $3 and soybeans dipped below $8 at my local New Hartford co-op. In Congress, we rolled up our sleeves and got to work passing historic amounts of aid to farmers in every commodity that was impacted. And we've also, because of trade and some other things, droughts in South America, we have had corn prices now get up to $5.40, and soybean purchases and prices get up to maybe $13. First time that there's been some profit in prices in agriculture since probably 2014 or maybe even 2013. We also saw significant purchases from China of corn and soybeans, which helped row crops rebound, as I just said, to positions of strength for this next planting season. Washington, D.C. looks a little bit different than last year with the new administration and the new leadership in Congress. I've been able to work with every president throughout my years representing Iowa. When an administration's agenda is good for Iowa, I'm all in to help put that policy into place. If an administration's proposal would harm the rural economy and the family farmer, which as the Obama-era regulation known as Waters of the United States, I push back and work hard for better solutions, and I'll do that again. It is comforting to know that former Governor Tom Vilsack again takes the reins at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I have a long relationship with Secretary Vilsack. I can't think of a single quarrel that I've had with him during his previous tenure. I know that he knows agriculture very well, and he knows the importance of maintaining the institution of the family farm. As for Congress, I'm looking forward to working with the new chairman of the Senate Agriculture Committee, which is Senator Stabenow of Michigan. There's important work to be done in reauthorizing mandatory livestock reporting and ensuring cattle producers have a more transparency in the market. I will also be looking for opportunities to expand the use of biofuels, which reduce greenhouse gas emissions and provide 43,000 jobs in Iowa. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to update you on what I'm working on in Washington. As a senior senator of one of the top agricultural states in the country, and also as a family farmer, I will continue to be an outspoken advocate for farmers in rural America. We do a great deal to provide cheap food and fiber and fuel for Americans' consumers, and we're going to continue to do that. And that's all because of the institution of the family farmer.
And thank you very much to Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa for his comments ahead of the Senate portion of the congressional panel we're having here on the Alpha Ag Summit presented by Hitchpin. We do want to remind everyone logging on two options here for you. You can leave comments on our video, and if it's a question you'd like to ask our panelists or panelist coming up here, we may get to it. Scott Collin from our stations in Redwood Falls, Minnesota, keeping an eye on those this morning, and he'll let us know if there's a question worth asking our panel. We also want to remind everybody that we do have an opportunity to win a deep sea fishing trip. Just register at alphaagsummit.com for that trip out of Sarasota, Florida. Be sure and log on to that at alphaagsummit.com. And that is courtesy of one of our sponsors of the Summit BNS Equipment Sales. Well, we now move to the other side of the Capitol building, as we have a member of the Senate Ag Committee joining us, one of the newest members of the Senate Ag Committee, Dr. Roger Marshall of Kansas, recently elected to represent the Sunflower State, succeeding former Ag Chairman Pat Roberts. Dr. Marshall grew up on the family farm in Butler County and became the first college graduate in his family, first attending Butler County Community College, then making his way to Manhattan to attend Kansas State University, and then getting his MD at the University of Kansas. Marshall also served in the Army Reserves for 7 years, practiced medicine in Great Bend for 25 years before turning his attention to serving Kansans in Washington. Marshall served 2 terms in the U.S. House from the Big First District, serving on the Ag Committee before winning election to the Senate this past November. In the Senate, Marshall will also serve on the Energy and Natural Resources, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, and Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committees. Dr. Marshall and his wife, Lena, have been married for 36 years and are the parents of 4 children and 3 grandchildren. Dr. Marshall, it's an honor to have you here on our Alpha Ag Summit this morning. Okay, and hopefully we've got the audio working there, Dr. Marshall. If
you want.
Oh, here.
Yeah, how's it going? Can you hear me now?
Oh, doing all right, sir. We've got the audio going now as, we're connecting to you, and a lot of activity going on in Washington. Before we discuss it further, we do remind everyone that the views and opinions expressed on today's panel are not those of Alpha Media and do not represent the viewpoints of Alpha Ag Network stations, their farm directors, or management. This broadcast is protected by copyright law. Credit should be given whenever sharing or reposting this video. Well, a lot of activity in Washington today. Primarily on the House side, they're set to vote on the $1.9 trillion coronavirus aid proposal that's packaged as a budget reconciliation effort. Provided it passes the House, Dr. Marshall, what will happen to it when it gets to the Senate and its committees?
Well, first of all, good morning, everyone. And I was starting to say, whoever wins that fishing trip to Sarasota, let me know if they need somebody to co-host them. And if you're following Chuck Grassley, there's not much more to be said. But this reconciliation package, borrowing $2 trillion more from your grandchildren, probably not the right time to do that. The good news is, not just in agriculture, but really the rest of the country, the economy's heating up. We're down to less than 6% unemployment across the country now, predicting 9% GDP growth. If we certainly need to help some people, but it needs to be laser focused. We don't need to be borrowing more money from your grandchildren to help bail out blue states that have wasted money. So I think there's bigger fish to fry, more important fish to be frying right now.
Now, does this package adequately address agriculture's needs? And if not, where should changes be made?
Well, look, I think there's, but I think very little of that ever ends up helping our producers, to be frank. There's $1.5 billion sitting on the Secretary of Agriculture's desk right now, money used before that we've appropriated before that needs to be sent out to producers right now. I don't see a lot of money. This legislation in front of us, $2 trillion, has nothing to do with agriculture.
Okay. Now, it's my understanding that there wasn't much room for amendments when several items came up before the House Ag Committee. A moment ago, we were visiting with Representative Feenstra of Iowa, who was seeking disaster relief for farmers in the Hawkeye State that had been impacted by last summer's derecho. But it ended up being a largely party line divide from a committee that's historically one of the most bipartisan. Will there be any wiggle room in the Senate Ag Committee if any of these amendments are brought up by anybody on your committee?
Well, we'll see. I think this is all political show that you're talking about right now. The real picture here is borrowing $2 trillion from your grandchildren that we don't need to be doing right now. The Ag Committee is bipartisan. There's wonderful bipartisan opportunities there. I think that this show is being broadcast throughout the Midwest. We started off, from maybe Minnesota, whether it's Senator Klobuchar or Senator Smith, great bipartisan opportunities. I've been to Minnesota, 1963 Beach Bonanza, so I could learn more about sugar beets, right? So there is great bipartisan opportunity, but I just don't see that this is the vehicle. We need to get beyond this budget reconciliation. It's a partisan process. The Republicans have had no input, zero input.
So
we have
if
passed $4 trillion worth of CARES legislation in the past, and nothing, and there's nothing bipartisan about this legislation. I'm sorry.
Is there an alternate that could be considered or that could be brought up that might be more bipartisan?
No, frankly not. What we need to be focused on right now is getting vaccinations into people's arms, getting people back to work, and our kids back to school. We can print and borrow from your grandchildren if we don't get kids back in school and people back to work right now. Look, this cold, dark, dreary winter is almost over with. I can see that we could have herd immunity by April or May if our president's team and our governors do their job. So I'm a physician as well. We recently found out that the vaccinations after one shot, 70 to 80% effective. If we get those vaccinations out and we do our job, we get herd immunity. What agriculture needs is a strong nationwide economy and a strong world economy. I'm so proud of the trade negotiations, agreements that we've accomplished already. We've already renegotiated over 50% of the ag trade agreements between Canada, Mexico, between China, South Korea, and Japan. That's over 50% of our ag export markets, and those are working. We've got the best commodity prices we've seen in 8 years. We're going in the right direction. The best thing we can do for agriculture is getting a strong world economy going.
And we'll go ahead and take the pivot to a trade that you've provided there, Dr. Marshall, as yesterday. There was a hearing on Catherine Tai, her nomination to become U.S. Trade Representative. Several current and potential deals were mentioned yesterday during that hearing, as well as several that you've mentioned as well. First of all, your impressions on Ms. Tai, and if she'd be the correct person to step into the Trade Representative's office?
Yeah, I think that this is a win for agriculture. I can certainly support her. I had the privilege of going to Mexico City and negotiating the final round of the USMCA trade agreement, 3 years ago as a freshman congressman. And she was part of that delegation, and I got to spend many hours with her. I had no idea that she would, rise to be the superstar that she is today. So she understands agriculture. Certainly will be a huge priority for her, and I think she's a win-win for agriculture. And what we talked about recently when we did our Zoom call, I wish I could have met her in person. We talked about the future agriculture trade agreement. So setting in front of us are Great Britain, India, China, some African nations, and South America as well. And certainly she gets it. She understands that the European Union is trying to continue to lock out agriculture. And she understands that if Europe wants to sell their luxury cars to America, then they need to give American producers, ag producers, access to the European Union. So I think she's somebody that we can support and that we can count on.
Now, a lot of these deals, of course, whenever they're hammered out, they eventually have to be approved and ratified by the Senate. So I'll just ask you for a quick wish list. What 3 countries or blocks would you like to see a deal come before the Senate in the next 2 years?
Well, I think the European Union would be number 1. India would be number 2, and then a phase 2 with China. I think that those would be it. But to your point, we also have the current trade agreements to implement. I think Canada's having a little hiccup up there with some of their milk promises. So we got to keep our eye on the ball as well. And again, I think she's a very smart person. She gets it, and she'll keep an eye on making sure everybody plays up to their level of the playing agreement as well.
We'll talk about implementation of USMCA now. You mentioned some of the hiccups going on. Once again, Canada's dairy system, their dairy producers very particular about protection. Our dairy producers still needing to, get a foot in the door and, balance out their sheets. So what are we hearing in terms of any pushback between here and Ottawa?
Well, I do think that Canada's kind of dragging their feet, and my dad always taught me, if you don't have something good to say about somebody, don't say it. So I think they're good people, great friends, a great partner to the United States. And I think we can work it out. But mostly what I don't want them doing is subsidizing their milk processing. Here in Kansas, we have one of the largest milk processing plants in the world, where we take the milk and then turn it into powder. And what we don't want is Canada subsidizing that process and then undercutting us on the world market.
And then turning our attention to Mexico, I believe there have been a couple issues that have come up there, one of which actually is, I believe there was talk of legislation concerning genetically modified organisms. What are you hearing about that, and any potential impact on USMCA?
You got me on that one. It's not on my radar screen, but we'll sure take a look at it. Are you talking about for animals or for plants? I'm just curious.
Well, it's been popping up on pretty much on the periphery of my radar too, but that there's been some discussions about that. So I don't know if what you had heard either.
I don't got anything for you. Sorry.
Okay. Well, we will look into that in a future conversation, Senator Roger Marshall, as we are continuing our panel here, Congressional Panel with members of the Ag Committees on the Alpha Ag Summit. It is presented by Hitchpin, and we'll focus on the complexion of the committee, Dr. Marshall, and you had served on the House Ag Committee. Why was it important for you to pursue a seat on the Senate Ag Committee, making your way across the hall, across the rotunda to the Senate?
Well, sure. Yeah. For the Kansas economy, 40% of it's driven by agriculture. Certainly, if you would look at my home where I live right now, agriculture probably makes up more like 60 or 70% of my home county as well. Fifth generation farm kid. I'm still personally invested in agriculture. So this is my heart. This is what I love doing for a lot of reasons. And certainly traditionally, filling those boots of Pat Roberts. They're looking awfully big right now, the former chairman of both the House and the Senate Ag Committees. So I think it's important that Kansas has a voice at that table. It's hard to believe that we're going to be starting to talk about a new farm bill. And we still got, 3-4 years left on this one. But we'll be taking dives now into what's working, what's not working, making sure that we understand the importance of things like crop insurance going forward as well. So I think that just like the states that your listeners right now, Kansans want a voice at that table.
Now, not only were you someone that had to fill in big shoes by replacing Pat Roberts as the senator from Kansas, but also the committee's new ranking member, John Bozeman of Arkansas. Give us your impressions of Dr. Bozeman. Oh, goodness. So Dr. Bozeman and I have been good friends for the last 4 years. We've had dinner together many Tuesday nights. He's one of the kindest, nicest people that you ever will meet. He has a big heart. He's brilliant, a great listener. And he certainly is a person that can reach across the aisle to work with Senator Stab. And also, he'll be a great leader. He certainly has a great working knowledge of agriculture, and not just agriculture in Arkansas, but I think throughout the Midwest. So he's a good soul, a great soul. And I have to interject for a moment. I did have the opportunity to meet Senator Bozeman when he was actually briefly the representative for Northwest Arkansas before heading into the Senate. And he does seem to be someone that would definitely be in position to work well as the ranking member. And I think some of that comes from, and I have to interject this too, I believe he actually played for one of Frank Broyles' squads down there at the University of Arkansas. Yeah, you've got that right. And he was actually a lineman. If you would look at him now, he's pretty thin and trim and fit, but he did. He used to play down there. And I think he's one of those people, he seems maybe a little quiet, but he's got a big fire burning inside of him, and has certainly got a great work ethic. So we can't wait to get to work together on more issues. We'll pivot to the next seat to Senator Bozeman, and that is the Ag Chair, Debbie Stabenow of Michigan. Give us your impressions and opportunities you've had to visit with the chairwoman.
Yeah, so Senator Stabenow is a person that I got to meet, I think, 3 or 4 years ago when Pat Roberts brought her to our alma mater, Kansas State University, to kick off the first Farm Bill hearing. And I could tell right then, she's brilliant, she's very smart, but she's also a great listener and understands agriculture. And she's a tough negotiator. I got to tell you, Senator Roberts says she's a tough negotiator. But again, I think that what's important to Michigan agriculture will be a lot of the same priorities as Kansas agriculture. So again, a person that we can work with, whose heart's in the right place. And I think she wants good agriculture policy, and certainly is someone that we can all work with.
Now, one of the historic hallmarks of the Ag Committee is that they are one of the most bipartisan in Congress. Unfortunately, with the budget reconciliation effort we were talking about earlier, that bipartisanship not showing up. But is there a level of concern that the divisions in Congress that we've been seeing over the past several years could end up making its way into the Ag Committee?
I think we'll be able to break through it. And, I think Senator Klobuchar and Senator Smith from Minnesota, Democrats, but we have so much in common that we will work our way through it. And I think we're able to put our Republicanship off of, back in our hearts and not on our shirt sleeves as we talk about agriculture. I think we've got so much in common that we'll be able to work things out. Biofuels is a great example as well. You heard Chuck talking about that earlier, Senator Grassley. Biofuels is something that should unite all of us, whether you're in Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and places in between as well, Nebraska. So I think we've got so much in common that really I think most of us put our economics ahead of many other, more personal issues.
Now, we've alluded to this on a few occasions during our conversation, Dr. Marshall. One of the biggest tasks facing the Agriculture Committee is devising the Farm Bill every 5 years, halfway through the current one, so we got to get started on the new one. What successes have you seen with the current bill, and what in particular should be addressed in the 23 version?
Yeah, well, Senator Roberts always said when you're writing a new Farm Bill, the first thing you do is go sit on the tongue of the wagon and listen to the farmers. And farmers usually aren't too bashful about telling you what's wrong with the Farm Bill. And really, our complaints have been minimal, if any. So I think that there's a lot of things we must have gotten right. I think about on the ARC and the PLC, the Title I funding, giving producers the opportunity to change year by year. I think that that's been a good thing. I hear lots of good things about the EQIP program, the conservation programs as well. And I think crop insurance, which is to us, the crop insurance is the backbone of every farm bill. That something must be working right in it as well, because no one is telling me, we need to tweak this or tweak that on the crop insurance. And I keep just emphasizing to folks, one of the reasons that Americans only pay 8 or 9% of their salaries for groceries is crop insurance. It helps that farmer plant that next crop. No one gets rich off it, but it gives them a chance to put that next crop in. So we're listening, and I really think we got a lot of things right. I think, the challenges will always be is when we start talking about conservation, how many acres do we put into CRP? And where are those conservation dollars best used? But I really think that from the Ag Committee standpoint, we are priorities of crop insurance, Title I funding. I bet we're 95% agreement on those issues.
Now, turning our attention to probably the three letters that probably produce more anxiety or frustration amongst farmers than any other combination of three letters, EPA. Between the RFS, Clean Water Act, registrations for various crop management tools, perhaps no agency outside USDA has more impact on agriculture than EPA. We're awaiting the confirmation hearing for Michael Regan, who is President Biden's pick to head EPA. Have you had a chance to visit with him? And what confidence do you have that he'll adequately address farmers' concerns about EPA policies?
Yeah, I've not had the pleasure of meeting him yet or getting to talk to him. I think my bigger concern is just the policy, the big picture policy that I've been hearing coming from the White House. No matter which secretary we've been interviewing or you're having confirmation hearings, I should say, to me, it feels like a job interview. I've interviewed so many people for jobs, and their first or second priority, they talk about climate change. And what I'm trying to share with them is that, look, farmers and ranchers are the original conservationists. We were doing this way before it was in vogue. I remember the terraces that my grandfathers built back in probably the 60s. And now they're wanting to regulate the water that run off those terraces. We did a great soil conservation practice, but we're being punished for doing it here decades later as well. So I'm very concerned. I'm a little bit encouraged on their EPA as far as on the RFS and the small refinery exemptions. Maybe they'll cut us some slack, but big picture, agriculture is going to have to work hard. And I just hope that Secretary Vilsack focuses on agriculture as opposed to being the climate. I love hiking, fishing, hunting. Our family farms, been in the families now for 5 generations. My children would be the 6th generation. Wow, that's hard to imagine. I have 3 grandsons. I want when my grandsons are taking their grandchildren fishing and hunting on our farming land, I hope they say, this was my favorite thing I did with Grandpa Marshall, right? So I think that's the focus, the story we have to keep telling in agriculture. We have to keep telling our story of the great agriculture practices that we're doing. We're putting carbon back in the ground every day. Someone brings up to me, oh, this no-till farming, that's a great idea. That's more soil conservation. And I'll tell them, no-till farming? Are you kidding me? We've been doing that for over 20 years on my land. That's nothing new. There are new innovative opportunities here, but what we can't do is have it driven by the government. We need agriculture in control, and I think that there's an opportunity in agriculture in the middle of all of this.
We are coming towards the end of our time on this panel. Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas. Before we wrap up, earlier this week, Secretary Vilsack confirmed you were among the 92 yes votes for Secretary Vilsack. We actually had him on our Ag Summit about a couple of hours ago. Your reaction to Mr. Vilsack making his return to USDA?
Well, we're excited to work with Secretary Vilsack. Certainly all the agriculture groups in Kansas unanimously support him as far as I know, and I bet that's true for most of your listeners. Being from the great state of Iowa, certainly he understands agriculture and how important it is to the economy. So I'm excited to work with him and certainly have a lot of faith and confidence in him as well.
Dr. Roger Marshall, the senator from Kansas, visiting with us on our Alpha Ag Summit. We are going to go ahead and wrap things up. Anything in particular, anything additional that our viewers or listeners should be keeping their eyes and ears out for over the next year or so from the Senate Ag Committee?
Well, I think even bigger than that is just my message of hope that this long, dark winter is almost over with. I can see that the trees are going to bud, the flowers are going to come up, the crops are going to go in the ground. And if we just stay locked in as a country, getting your vaccinations in people's arms, getting people back to work and getting our kids in school, that this is all going to work out. America is going to come roaring back. We'll have herd immunity by this spring. And I really think that our economy will be back to pre-pandemic levels by June. You give farmers and ranchers a strong economy and we'll take our chances. So everybody hang in there. The sun's coming up.
Dr. Roger Marshall of Kansas visiting with us, a member of the Senate Ag Committee. It was a pleasure to have you on our Ag panel, Congressional Ag panel this morning.
You bet. My pleasure, everybody. Be safe.
And that will do it for our congressional panel discussion. Again, Senator Roger Marshall of Kansas representing the Ag Committee on the Senate side. We had 2 representatives from the House Ag Committee, Republicans Randy Feenstra of Iowa and Tracy Mann of Kansas. We thank all the producers who viewed this panel today and contributed to our discussion. The Alpha Ag Network, along with our sponsors, are proud to bring you this Ag Summit. A special thanks to our presenting sponsor, Hitchpin. The views and opinions expressed on today's panel are not those of Alpha Media and do not represent the viewpoints of Alpha Ag Network stations, their farm directors, or management. This broadcast is protected by copyright law, and credit should be given whenever sharing or reposting of this video. In just a few moments, we'll have the financial panel that will be here at alphaagsummit.com, so stay tuned for that. Alpha Ag Network, local farm programming, promoting, respecting, and celebrating the industry that drives our communities, agriculture. Our producer has been Dan Wanick, along with my colleagues, including Scott Collin, Dwayne Murley from KWMT in Iowa, also tagging along this morning backstage. I'm Kyle Hill. Thank you for watching this portion of the Alpha Ag Summit.